Thank everyone for being here today. We're not going to interrupt your day drinking, so please feel free to continue. But I think this is going to be a very exciting panel to go along with it. Joining us here today, we have Justin Simien, writer and director of Bad Hair. Colman Domingo, who's here in the movie Zola. Tessa Thompson, actor and executive producer of Sylvie's Love. There's so many different ways to tell stories now, like platforms, methods, ways to go about it. And Colman, Zola is such a perfect film to sort of like start a conversation like that. The movie's based on a viral Twitter thread that then, I'm just so curious, when the script came to you, written by Janixa Bravo and Jeremy O. Harris, what did you make of it? What did it seem like when you first read that script?
To be very honest, in the very first 3 pages, I thought, wow, this is fantastic. I never laughed so hard. I thought it was raw. It was honest. It was bold. I saw this, young woman in the center of her story, observing all of these horrific things that were about to happen. And you're like, oh my God, this is like, a tale of like Alice in Wonderland in some way. But but it's also, it's sized up, and it's like, and the wonderful thing is, Jeremy O. Harris has been comparing sort of like, her to be sort of like the Homer of our times, and or Jamaica Kincaid, which is very interesting because she's taken this form, the way she was telling story, the way she told it in 140 characters each time, is outstanding because each phrase holds up with so much visual language, so much intention, very clear action, and so it's outstanding. I think you want to see even more. I don't know, she's at the forefront of doing something like that, but I think there's so many more writers out there who may not even know that that's actually such a talent and gift that they have, that can transcend just from being Twitter. That can actually be a more narrative, like whether for television or film or theater.
I know, Tessa, I saw on Twitter that you were at a screening of Zola last night, and the movie has this just really special and unique energy. Like, what did you make of it?
Oh, I thought it was tremendous. I'm really struck. I think we're living in a time in terms of media and content where all of the things that have previously been sort of obstacles in new voices getting their story told or being sort of broken down entirely. Obviously with streaming and all these new platforms, it feels like the Wild West, like there's a new frontier. So when I first read Zola's tweets when they became viral, and then there was this excitement around this possible movie, and then knew that it was going to be made. I'm also such an enormous fan of Janixa Bravo's. I loved her last feature, Lemon, which was here. I think she's such a unique and singular voice in cinema, and so I was really excited to see this film. And I hope that audiences, first of all, if you didn't know that it was based on a Twitter thread and you went in just seeing the film, I think you would understand that it's a story that's really important to be told, that, like Colman says, is really honest and nuanced, and also just the film is so incredibly stylish. It just looks good. It has a vibe. It feels like so of its time, but also timeless in a way that I think really great films are. And also so exciting that it feels like by hook or by crook, we can decide that we're just going to tell our stories, and no one can say what deserves to be in a screen, what deserves to be projected, what deserves to exist in media. And I love that. I love that now, writers can feel sort of liberated to get onto any platform, any medium that they choose to, and say, like, I have something to say. Like, I got a story to tell. And it can be told. I think it's genius.
Because, Justin, you've been working recently in television, feature film, and you have your own podcast even. How do you decide where an idea goes? Like, is it ever a challenge for you to like figure out among these platforms that you have available to you, like what the best place for an idea is?
I mean, it's hard, but it's like, who will take it? Like, who wants it? Who wants to give me some money to be black and weird in this new venue? Honestly, but the thing is that I was put on this earth to tell stories. I love stories. And, I grew up wanting to be a filmmaker, reading comic books, but I couldn't afford a camera. So I would make little things on my tape recorder and do like audio stories. And then, when I finally I had this stupid little computer program called X-Men Cartoon Maker. I'm a nerd also. welcome to me. But like we basically, I all of the formats of storytelling kind of scratch the itch for me. And one of the things that like I think is profound about being a storyteller is that, you know, so much of our lives and who we are is formed by story. Money is a story. Democracy is a story. You know, racism is a story. And to be able to contribute to the stories that go out into the fabric of culture that sort of shape who we are and shape who's coming next and how they'll think about things, I think it's a profound responsibility. I think it's important to interrogate the kinds of stories that we're conditioned to expect all the time, which is what I love what you guys are saying, particularly about Zola. You know, one of the things we always, I try to talk about with Dear White People, we're doing the TV show, is there are other story forms to explore. You know, there is the crisis play, which is an African story form where you sort of have a member of everyone in the tribe present in the story, and a danger shows up and a conflict shows up, and then the play ends, which we would find very unsettling here. But like, that's a story form that is designed to send the audience out into the world, back into their communities to figure out how to solve the problem. And I just think like, you know, it's fun that like new people are getting keys to the vehicles to create stories. Cause you know, I love me a hero's journey, okay? Love me a 3-act structure, but there are other ways to sort of, to say things. And I think the more people we give access to film and TV, the more kinds of ways we're going to hear about ourselves. I think that's very exciting.
Well, I think all the projects that we're talking about do have an energy about today. Even Sylvie's Love, which is a period piece, I think still has a lot to tell us about what's happening for us now. Is that something you're all thinking about? I mean, a movie like Bad Hair in particular, are you thinking a lot about what that has to say to this moment as you're making the movie?
I mean, absolutely. You know, Bad Hair, which takes place in 1989, you know, kind of takes place in this kind of cinematic sort of Brian De Palma-y dream world, but it's about us, you know, and it's about the way the stories that we're told and the stories that we inherit sort of inform the way we think in ways we don't even realize. You know, there's a, you know, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but there's a sort of thread about African folklore in the movie. And that's important to me because when I sort of discovered all of these amazing stories that my actual ancestors were telling themselves, you know, to get through slavery and to get through the aftermath of slavery, and I'm discovering like, you know, the Flying African story and the story about witches leaving their skin at night, and we made up one for the movie called the Mars Hair Girl story. I'm realizing there's all this like intuitive wisdom that would inform the way I go through America that I don't get from Hansel and Gretel or the stuff that I'm taught in school. And so, yeah, I think, in that same way, Bad Hair is really pulling from different kinds of story thread, whether it's the music we listen to, whether it's the actual, you know, playing with form of what a psycho thriller can be, how a story affects us and how we receive story and tell stories to each other is always on the forefront of my work and how I think.
I've become a producer as well and I have my own production company, that we realize that it's not enough to just want to have the idea and to tell the story and tell a story that, you know, typically may not get the noise that it could. But it's important for us to become producers as well and make sure the work is out there. I think we all start to realize that as artists as well. It's like, you know, I've been in theater starting the theater for like 30 years, and I would go to auditions when I was a young actor, and I would audition for roles like a guy named Cool Whip Tyrell. And I'm like, I grew up in the inner city, and I never came across a Cool Whip Tyrell. So I thought I need to write stories from another perspective and believe that those stories have validity. And the inner city actually looked like me, and we actually, we sat around a table at 6 o'clock and had dinner like everybody else, and kids went to college. But we were struggling with other things that other people were. And it may seem like smaller stories. It may not seem as sexy because it's not what people may think of as the inner city. But it's our responsibility to tell those other stories and other narratives. And the only way to do it and do it even stronger is to become producers as well.
Hardly anything sounds as sexy as Cool Whip Tyrell. Like, that's the person I want to meet.
Especially said in my deep voice, right?
I would travel anywhere to meet Cool Whip Tyrell.
You're into that?
Yes, I'm into that. I've been thinking a lot about not just the kind of stories that we tell, but how the stories make us feel. And I think we're in a time where, and I work a lot in like sort of sci-fi and speculative fiction, which I love. But it's pretty dystopian, because we're grappling with ideas of technology and immortality and what it means to be alive now. And I like those questions. They make me want to day drink, though. What I liked about a film like Sylvie's Love was the idea to make a film that's sort of in the style of these, a throwback film that's in the style of these sort of epic love stories. Our film is set in 1957 and 1962, respectively. And the truth is, if you look at the sort of, iconography of cinema, I can't even think of stories in which there are, black people at the center of those narratives that get just to be fly and in love, and look beautiful, and where we get to center our joy and our elegance, and we're just sort of all but erased from that era of filmmaking. So to make a film in the style of films that were made then is sort of like rewriting film history in a way, and I love that idea. And also that you could make a film that basically just asks for audience members to sit for just under 2 hours and just be swept away, and to leave the theater feeling good and being reminded of what it's like to fall in love and make the choices that you make, both bad and good, when you're swept away by that feeling. And as much as I love the idea of grappling with some of these tougher questions, of looking at how horrific we can be as humans, it's really nice to remember how lovely we can be and it can be. So I've been thinking a lot about the implications of the kind of content that I make. For example, if you make a piece that's set in the future, do you then have the responsibility to create what the future ought to look like? Like, I think about that. Like, if I made a film set, and Justin and I used to talk about this all the time, because we used to be like, why aren't there more black people in the future? And why aren't there more black people in space? You know what I mean?
They don't make it to space.
They don't make it to space.
They never make it to space.
Or they don't make it out of space. What was the space movie? Remember there was a black guy in one of the space movies, and he looked the same like 20 years later, and I was like, black don't crack.
Yep.
But yeah, so I think about the future, and I'm like, if I made a film that was set even, a Scotia in the future, I don't know what a Scotia is, like 25 years or something, would I want there to be single-use plastic? Would I want there to be guns? Like, do I have the responsibility not to show the world just as it is, but as it should be? I don't know. It's something I think about. So you can clap. But I think about how, the content, the stories that I tell, how I want to make people feel. And maybe that sounds saccharine, but I just think we're in a time where we need to ask big questions, and we also need tenderness.
And Justin, can you talk about that a little bit? Do you think at all about kind of like the version of the world that you present in your movies, whether you want to be presenting the world as it is or as you might like it to be?
I mean, I tend to make things that leave people feeling really up at the end of them, so I'm kind of on the different tip. Because to me, I think that there's room for all of it. It's like I do a television show that's sort of pinpointing all of the painful, secret racist experiences that we're enduring but can't feel like we talk about. But then I go home and I totally fucking watch The Housewives and watch, The Circle on Netflix and other things that I'm embarrassed to say. Because I think it's a mix of both. I think for me, the power, one of the things I love about a movie is when it sends me out into the lobby with just something stuck in my throat that I just can't figure out. Something about that movie just, and I have to talk it out and I have to work it out at home. Like, I like art that sort of stays with me. But I also think that, what Tessa was talking about, I think about a movie like Call Me By Your Name and the sort of, the monologue that the dad gives the gay son. That
oh my God.
Every gay son wishes their dad would give them, but I don't know any ones that has, including mine. We never had that monologue given to us, and so to have that experience in the movie is also cathartic. So I think it's a mix of both. I think it depends on what you're trying to say and what you're trying to give to your audience at that time. I think they're both valid.
And don't tell me you weren't about Peaches after that film.
You've
thought about Peaches differently.
I was excited.
A whole new relationship.
Yeah.
It stayed with you.
Yeah, I ate a lot more fruit after that movie.
Wonder why.
And Colman, I mean, it's a great way to ask with regards to Zola. Even the conversation from just after a couple screenings of the movie, a lot of people are talking about it's this fun, wild adventure that you go on with all these characters, but then at the end there is something very unsettling about it, and part of that is in the storytelling, the way that their story is told. And how do you feel about that? Like, are you Do you have any thoughts on the conversation that springs up around a movie like this as far as what it's, big picture about?
I knew that it was going to spark a huge conversation because, first of all, it's how are you able to digest it and articulate exactly what it is, and especially like even some of the criticism as well. Whether it's been beautifully received, but it's also being to look at the the optics of the way the person is critiquing it. If you don't understand what baby hair is, and you see her doing that and getting it laid down to understand the context of who this woman is, or if you're putting on this young woman who's in the center of her story and she's not goosenecking like you think she should be, but you're not witnessing that this young woman is, she's a very different black woman. She's not, what people would think would be in a strip club. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's dispelling a lot of that, and it's really making people very charged up. I've seen some things on Twitter where people are charged up about, like, how do you talk about this film? Because also you really need to know what you're speaking about. You have, not that it has to be well lived, but you really have to know. You can't just look at it from an outsider and then just judge it or in any sort of way. You have to really be on the inside a bit more,
Because Justin, with regards to Bad Hair, I mean, this is a movie you've spoken about that you made this specifically, as much as it is a horror comedy, it is also meant as a love letter to black women.
Yeah.
And that's a group of people that don't often get movies made for them.
No, it's usually, it's usually a very beautiful, fragile white woman in the center of a horror movie, and we are drawn into her tragedies. And by the way, the movies that I'm talking about, talking about like Carrie or Rosemary's Baby or Dressed to Kill. I love me a good crazy Brian De Palma '80s movie. Those movies are fantastic, but they are often the results of white men's fetishes and white straight men's fetishes. And I felt like I wanted to create something where there's a lot of crazy shit that happens in Bad Hair. It's a movie about a killer weave, so maybe that goes along with the territory. But to me, the most horrific aspects of Bad Hair are the things that are real. Because I feel like the women in the movie are being conditioned by the culture around them into grabbing things that are meant to give them power, but come with costs that they don't really have a chance to consider. I feel like that's what it means to be marginalized in this country, to be conditioned to sort of aspire to be this or that. And we realize, only once we're up the ladder that we're actually about to get shoved over the cliff, and actually I didn't have a choice in the first place. That to me is what actually scares me about this country and trying to achieve and trying to be seen in this country. And I felt like, I just felt like I could use those levers that, Hitchcock innovated and that De Palma and Polanski and all these white men got to sort of pour their obsessions into. I could use those dials and levers to sort of make us afraid of the reality that we actually live in.
Tessa, as you've been moving forward in your career, I mean, yes, you're starring in these sort of big budget sci-fi films, as you were mentioning, but you're also making time to act in and produce movies like Sylvie's Love or Little Woods that you had here, or the movie Passing that's coming out later this year. Is it difficult for you to sort of be able to find that purpose and intentionality in what you're doing and to realize that you had the power to take that stand and to help get these movies made and be a part of some of these, quote, smaller movies?
I don't think I'm really thinking about it, and I'm not sure that I place these projects, I don't place them in different places. Does that make sense? I mean, I think there's something distinct about working, it's just work, yeah. There's something distinct about working in independent cinema just because of the parameters. Like, you have less time, you have less money, there's less people. There's something taxing about working in big movies sometimes because you're doing silly things in front of a green screen and someone's eating a sandwich, and you have to, try to forget that they're there or something. But so the challenges are slightly different, but for me it's similar in the sense that you're just trying to tell a story. And I think what's been so neat recently is, I mean, for the most part, all of the sort of bigger sort of tentpole movies that I've been making have been with independent filmmakers. I made Creed with Ryan Coogler. I made Thor Ragnarok with Taika Waititi. So, I've been really lucky to work with filmmakers that are sort of working in the same way, just with more money. And that's fun to watch someone, who has really big ideas and has had to fit it in 23 days now have 5 months to execute big ideas and to do it in a different way. But to me, it's sort of all stories. And, you know, my favorite filmmakers to work with are the ones that are irreverent, that regardless of what sort of box they're put in, they're trying to say something and disrupt. Those are the people that I seem to be gravitating towards constantly, like Justin Simien. And so I feel lucky to get to do that in big movies, but I always feel like it feels like home to get to work with a small group of people that you trust, to get to feel like you're in the trenches together. It's very easy as an actor to feel like a cog in something moving, you know, that you're just sort of like, you can be puppeteered a little bit, you know, and sometimes you want to be like, I'm not a puppet, I'm a real boy. You know, so I feel like when you work in independent cinema, you sometimes have a bit more agency because everyone's just trying to get it made by hook or by crook. And there's a democratized spirit of ideas, like the best idea wins. There's not this hierarchy. I really dislike hierarchy. So I feel comfy in that. But I think the best work environments are always that way, whether you have $1 million or you have $150 million. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. I think it does. But if one thing I enjoy so much about you in some of these bigger movies, I'm thinking specifically of Thor Ragnarok, you seem to bring so much of yourself. Like you're sort of coloring outside the lines a little bit of what some of those characters maybe could be. Like, do you feel in this that you're bringing a lot of yourself to those bigger projects too?
Yes, probably. Mostly because I don't know that I feel like I could execute the thing that would be expected of me. For example, I think like, you know, in sort of big budget tentpole movies, there's this expectation of sort of the female characters in it to like stand in certain ways, you know, and there's those like shots which I think are going away a bit, but the like up the body shots, you know, and that kind of stuff. And there's people that probably can do that really well. And I just feel goofy. So I don't know how else, you know, I'm just sort of approaching it the way that I see it. And I feel lucky that I've gotten to work with people that also want to sort of buck convention and, want to create sort of new iconography about what particularly women look like inside of those narratives. So in that way, I feel like I've been tasked to bring more of myself because we're trying to find something that feels singular and different than what we've seen before.
Because Colman, you mentioned earlier, I mean, you move so easily between stage work and television work and film work. As an actor, how different do those things all feel? Are you looking for different experiences when you are working in those different modes, or are you looking for some continuity there?
I don't think I'm looking for continuity. I think I'm going for what really moves me. I think it makes sense to me as I'm really examining the work that I'm really interested in, and even as a producer as well. It's like, you know, I'm really interested in really interesting depictions of human life, and that's the clearest way I can just say it. So it makes sense to me that like I'll bounce from theater and in all parts. You know, I write theater, I write musicals, I act, I direct, and same with television and with film as well. And I think it's just to be malleable. I just want the story told. For me, it doesn't matter which side I'm on. I think at some point I have a point of view that's stronger and outweighs the other. But also when people cast me or have me in the room, they usually know they want somebody with a big mouth. I'm a dramaturg. I'm not only, you don't just get an actor, I'm just going to try to work out the ideas and things that I'm not even a part of in the script, in the room. How does the room feel? How do we take care of each other? How do we take care of craft services? How do we take care of, you know, how are the PAs treated and the transpo and all that stuff? No, but I think I've always, I mean, that's me, again, my roots are in the theater, and I think it's about being a part of the whole. And so I think that, you know, which is why I move in, you know, in the audio space as well. I think that's important as well. It's another platform that I'm very interested in. So I love just being a part of great storytelling. So anything that's good, I want to be a part of, and I want to be in that room. And also, I want my voice to be in the room as well. And I want my voice to also take care of other voices. Like, it's very important for me to make sure that women are in the room, and gay people in the room, and disabled are in the room, because that's the way we create really good art, actually. It's not even a question. It's just pretty simple, actually. It's a simple formula, you know?
But can you talk a little bit, as you've moved through your career, is it difficult for you to remain open to those new things? Like you mentioned, the audio space. Like
No, I'm so open for it because I'm all here for it. I'm always the one telling my agents, like, yeah, I don't care if it pays $2. That artist is interesting and they're trying to do something. I want to be, honestly, it sounds kind of like a Pollyanna, but I want to be a part of someone else's dream sometimes. I'm like, wait, you've got some ideas about that. You may not have the money or the time, but maybe I can help you by being a part of it in some way and bring what I have. I've always been that way, and I feel like that makes sense to me. That moves me. And now I'm in a place in my career, which is it's a lucky place to be after 30 years, where I can really choose to do what I want to do.
You're going to have so many $2 offers tomorrow.
I'm all for it. Bring me those $2 off as long as it's a good story. You know what I mean? I'm cheap. I'm actually not. But I like to eat well, and and I got bills. So now, but I will make the choice in the moment on how it can value both of us. So if you've got a $2 offer in the house, Tessa Thompson and I will take it over, and we'll be stars and producers of your next film.
Yes.
While Justin's directing.
Yeah,
it.
you guys will do that. I'll have the $2 offer actually.
Great, I'll take it.
But Justin, do you feel that same way as well? Or is it a challenge for you at all to stay open to these new forms, like the idea of like starting your own podcast at a moment when you are quite busy, creating a television show? Like, is it difficult for you to stay open to these new ideas and new forms as they come along?
I mean, yeah, but life is difficult. I mean, difficult is sort of a given, I think. I find it necessary, the kind of things the kind of stories I want to tell, the kind of characters I want to bring to the screen. I mean, I have this thing in me where it's like if I'm not supposed to do something, like I feel so compelled to do it. And knowing that about myself, it means that I have to sort of not only be open to, but sort of be looking for the new way to tell a story, the new platform, the new kind of form it could take. One of the things that's been so interesting about doing Dear White People as a TV show is like, each season getting to reinvent what the show even is and like what a show is supposed to be on something like Netflix, which has only been around for so long. And what are those expectations of a thing that you watch in fits and starts, and sort of playing with that form. I mean, that's one of the things that drives me. And it's necessary because I don't think that, before there was a Netflix, I would have been able to do a Dear White People as a TV show. And likewise, all of these new platforms, whether they're streaming or whether we're talking about Audible, I think that they are like opportunities, but they're necessary for people who are trying to tell stories literally outside of the actual box. It's the only way a lot of us can even get in there. So it's always been, yes, difficult, but everything's difficult when you decide you want to be a storyteller, I think.
And it doesn't stop getting difficult either. I wanted to just piggyback on that. I feel like now I'm in the place where I've been like selling some television series and things like that. And it's always, you got to get down to the wire of like, they're looking at, numbers and things like that. And they're looking at something that's happened before. And I always believe that, well, the best stuff is the shit you didn't see before. And then it hit. And then, isn't that the formula? Like, there wasn't a Mad Men before. So don't try to get another Mad Men. Let's go for a really good story. And then trust that. And then trust that will find its audiences. I think that's what I believe. But a lot of times they're like, well, based on our numbers, this may not work. Instead of you're like, but you really like the story. So I'm challenged with that. So that's, I think, just laying out that there's some challenges that I'm having, even as a producer, and as I'm going around shopping series and films and things like that, where you hear, it's not only about, the creative content, it's also like, yeah, this is a film that has 9 pretty much unknown African-American teenage boys. Yeah, I don't have room for Brad Pitt. Because, what will bring in the numbers, but you're like, but you love the story, and you're really in with it, but you can't see how it's going to end up. You can't predict that it's going to make you're going to make your money back. So you got to start to find these people who are willing to lose money and lose their shirt. And so you can contact me at colman.domingo.com.
Yeah.
Right? Am I right?
Yeah, it's so true. I remember when Boots Riley was trying to make our film Sorry to Bother You, and he met with so many producers who said they really loved the idea, they loved the script, they loved everything, but they didn't understand how a movie like that could exist. They'd never seen it. And I just thought, well, had they never seen a Michel Gondry film, or had they never seen so many films in the tradition of that are magical realism? I think what they didn't say, is they had never seen a film like that with a cast that was all of color.
That's always what
Yes.
they actually mean.
But that's what they
That's the
actually.
truth.
That's
Yeah,
what they
yes.
actually.
They have no
that's what they
numbers for
actually
that.
meant. And likewise, I just made this film, Passing, which stars myself and Ruth Negga, and it's in black and white. And when they were trying to get that movie shot, they were like, well, it's in black and white. It's really hard to sell. Even though there's a film this year that was in black and white with 2 male leads, which I love, by the way, called The Lighthouse, and many other films recently that have been black and white. There's one role in the movie that's like kind of a despicable husband, and they said to Rebecca Hall, who's the writer-director, her directorial debut, they said, if you can up the part of the abusive husband, we could help you out, which is crazy. Like, really crazy. So I think, that what they mean to say is never what they say. But still, we try.
And now, how do you decipher that code? Like, is it just you hear these things often enough that you know what they're really saying? Like, is there a glossary somewhere?
I mean, you can feel it. You can
feel it.
I absolutely, every time I do something, whether it was Dear White People all the way through to Bad Hair, you can feel this sense of like, those things don't go together because kind of the black folks, like the black component of it is what we haven't seen before in this scenario. And, like I was mentioning, particularly for Bad Hair, I think about these crazy movies like the original Wicker Man or Body Snatchers, the '76 version with Donald Sutherland, or everything Brian De Palma did. Like, that is bad crazy, excuse my French, but we sort of like we go with these kind of white male fantasies because we're conditioned to accept that and go in these spaces. And I feel like it is interesting. But first of all, there's no other way to be, though. You got to innovate. I think like that's what gets me up in the morning, frankly, to tell a story. But yeah, there's a different kind of pushback when the filmmaking is black, or the characters are black, or the storyteller is black, and I can absolutely feel it. I mean, one of the things, not for nothing, like I'll have conversations with other filmmakers that were in my same, freshman class at Sundance, and we've had very different careers, and a lot of that has to do with what rooms we were allowed in and what obsessions we were allowed to sort of bring into those rooms. But this is not like a woe is me thing. It is what it is. But yeah, you kind of feel it. You kind of know it when you see it. But I think you got to use it as motivation to keep pushing and realize that being the first is really hard sometimes, but it can be exhilarating.
Colman, did you want anything to that?
I did, but I think he summed it up.
Well, I want to ask all of you, I mean, Tessa, you mentioned that you're going to be working with a first-time filmmaker on Sylvie's Love, Eugene Ash. I think this is his second feature film. What is it that draws you back to working with first-time, second-time filmmakers? Is there something still exciting about working with people who maybe they're kind of figuring out how to do this?
Yeah, it's my favorite. I love it so much. Also, I've gotten lucky with the first-time filmmakers that I've happened to work with, like Justin Simien and Boots Riley and Tina Mabry. I mean, really folks that are auteurs. And to get, for me, it just, you want to get those people early before they don't answer your calls. You know what I mean? You want to be like on the ground there. It's just it feels like a gift for me. I love working with people that just have a lot of big ideas. And I think there's something to being seasoned in a sense, but sometimes with more experience, you learn about all of the parameters. Sometimes when you're fresh, you just are operating from a place of purity in terms of what you want to say and do, and you haven't been in enough rooms that have told you that that's not possible, or we haven't seen it before. And then you have to find creative ways to do it. I mean, the story of Dear White People, the film, and how Justin got that made is a prime example of just being like, okay, I'm gonna find a way. You tell me there isn't a market for this, I'll just make a trailer and show you how popular it is and how many people want to see this film before it exists, in hopes that then someone will make the movie. So I love that ingenuity. I love that sort of forward thinking. I love people that just want to come in and disrupt, and I think that spirit is really strong in first and second time filmmakers. So I will do it until I'm lucky enough to do it continually. I'll just continue to do it.
Because Justin, I mean, in Bad Hair, Elle Lorraine, the star of the movie, I mean, she just feels like a fantastic discovery. Is it exciting for you to kind of be giving a spotlight to fresh talent when you're making stuff?
It's such an honor. Elle Lorraine is someone I knew since high school, and someone whose talent I've always seen that was there. And it's it's a double-edged sword because it's like somebody should have discovered her already, you know. But I am so lucky to get to give her a platform and a pedestal to sort of show what she can do and prove that she is going to be a bright star, you know. I mean, when we sort of had her read for the role, it was like this Black Shelley Duvall thing going on with her, and I was like, God, what an original way for a woman to get to be in a movie, and for us to like, you know. And the other thing that I learned from working with folks like Tessa, but really is to allow for the actors' little quirks and idiosyncrasies to sort of drive that character and that performance, so that we kind of lean in and fall into their uniqueness and make that sort of a point of specialness, as opposed to sort of trying to mask their uniqueness or like sort of fit them into the preconceived notion of what the character is. I think that like I have tremendous respect for what actors can do, especially Black women who, you know, unfortunately are put in these really rigid boxes through the audition process or just the casting process. Like, I love being able to give an opportunity to someone who's like, I get to play a version of myself and I've never ever gotten that chance or even seen it. That to me is like, when I get to be a part of that process for an actor, I mean, it's truly one of the reasons why I do what I do.
And as we, maybe as a way to head towards wrapping this up, Colman, I'm so taken by hearing you talk about the fact that you've been doing this for a while and that you're still so energized by it. And I just have to ask you how you, to kind of get back to our idea of storytelling, how do you feel about this as a moment for storytelling? Are you excited by the fact that there's all these different platforms, different ways for people to be telling stories now?
I'm very excited because I think, again, we're finding more unique and original voices. And also, like you're saying, finding unique and original actors and directors and designers as well. And like people who are willing to, they have no preconceived notions on the way things should be. And you were making me thinking about like working with Ava which was basically her second film. And just in terms of how she was, there was a rawness to it. And not to say she wasn't polished, but she would just, you know, write this monologue. Would you say this monologue tomorrow? And things like, and so like, oh yeah, I'll learn that. We'll figure that out together. And she's working on her feet and figuring it out. But then just saying, go with what's there as well. That's exciting. And so I'm always very excited about, you know, just like what's new, what's next. I seem to be working with a lot of young casts, you know. It's always, I feel like I'm giving dad vibes these days, but I'm always like, you know, it's Colman Domingo with the cast of Zola or with Assassination Nation or in Euphoria. It's like, yeah, I'm that dude because I want to be around that raw energy. You know, people, you know, jumping out on a ledge like Sam Levinson and just like, you know, believing we're going to fly with some new creative thinking, new camera angles, new scripts, work that we've never seen before. That's exciting.
And so I hope that we all take that energy with us out into the world. Thank you, everyone, for being here today.
Thank you so much.
To our fantastic guests.